to ruins. A Mongol army of 100,000 warriors invaded China through this pass north of the capital, Beijing. It is still the main highway where the train and motorway to Beijing pass through the mountains. Genghis Khan halted here, in front of the north gate of the Jiyongguan fortress. The Chinese pierced the ground in front of the gate with spikes to slow down the Mongol hordes, and sealed the great gate of the fortress with iron to prevent it from being opened. After a month of stalemate and no sign of weakening in the fortress, Genghis Khan decided to outflank it. He sent a team of soldiers through the hills, where the Chinese at this stage had not maintained the wall, and came from behind the fort. By the time the Chinese army realized what was happening, it was too late. The Mongols were swarming through the plain, attacking Jiyongguan from the rear. They destroyed the north gate and opened the way to the main army. Foreigners and barbarians now ruled China. It was a bitter lesson that the Chinese would never forget. The successor to Genghis Khan was Kublai Khan, who ruled the largest empire the world has ever known, running from China to the very borders of Europe. And he had no need of a great wall. He controlled it all. Despite his power, Kublai Khan wasn't going to last. The Chinese still viewed their Mongol rulers as invading barbarians. Devastating floods in the Yellow River triggered a popular revolt against the hated foreign rulers, and the Mongols were overthrown. They were replaced by a Chinese dynasty, the Ming, who were determined that the mistakes of the past would not be repeated. These are the descendants of the men who built the wall for the Ming and chased the Mongols out of China. They are proud of their ancestors, men and women who built and defended the last great wall of China. That's why these farmers in a remote village still perform martial arts every morning before heading off to work in the fields. With the Mongols expelled, the new rulers, the Ming emperors, were determined that an invasion would never happen again. And so, in 1368, when Europe was being decimated by the Black Plague, the Ming rulers created the world's largest and greatest civil engineering project. Even greater than earlier walls, because this wall was mostly built of stone. The Ming Wall stretches from Shanhaiguan on the Yellow Sea to Jiahuguan in the Gobi Desert. It lies across China like a long, winding spine, 4,000 miles in length, with thousands of watchtowers poking out like vertebrae. Much of the Great Wall was made of stone, a building material 100 times more labor-intensive than mud brick. The wall builders were not in the least daunted by spiked mountain peaks, and even among these misty mountain tops, the wall had to be zealously guarded. Watchtowers were crucial to the protection of the wall. If reinforcements were needed, the guards signaled to the village a mere half-mile away. Here, the old garrison walls of a long abandoned barracks still stand. Some 500 troops would have been stationed here, and if this wasn't enough, there were even larger concentration of troops in forts, a few minutes signaling away. In this way, a small number of men on the wall could alert an army of over 1 million men in a matter of a few hours. To build a wall to this standard was not easy. Much of the labor was carried out by convicts, who, if they died, had to be replaced by another member of their family, and so on until the sentence was completed. hardly a method that encouraged happy workers. Every 50 feet, the builders installed drains to carry off rainwater. These waterspouts were always built on the inside of the wall, the side away from the enemy, so he couldn't lasso a spout and climb up the wall. Here on a steep slope, defensive walls rise in steps up to the watchtower, so if the enemy did make it to the top of the wall, the crucial watchtowers could be fiercely defended. The watchtowers themselves stand out beyond the wall so that archers could rain arrows down on any soldiers below. The tower had a covered area for the troops to keep warm, sleep, and store weapons. In an open area at the top, protected by battlements, the troops kept watch and could repel invaders. It is an amazing defense system, particularly when you see the terrain it was built over. This section is almost vertical as it climbs a mountain slope. Here it's only a couple of feet wide and guards a drop of more than 1,000 feet. Determined that no barbarian would ever rule China again, the Ming fortified every inch of Chinese territory, lest small bands get through and open the gates to a larger army. The Ming emperors were willing to bear any burden, pay any price, to keep their dynasty in power. And this is where they ruled from, the great forbidden city in Beijing. With its gardens, halls, temples, and palaces, the city sprawls over 180 acres, surrounded by a moat and formidable walls. The Forbidden City, a place of seclusion, a place where the godlike Ming emperors could rule and dwell without being inconvenienced by the ordinary citizens of his realm. Within its vermilion walls existed a life unique in all of human history. At its center was the emperor, whose days were filled with the complicated rituals required of the ruler of China. If the rituals were carried out, the country would prosper and the Ming dynasty would flourish. Serving the emperor was an army of concubines, and guarding the concubines, an even larger army of eunuchs. One of the last of the Ming, Emperor Wan Li, was a weak monarch who managed to hold on to his throne for 47 years. Wan Li ruled deep within his palace and was never seen by his people or his ministers, and rarely even by his eunuchs. Cut off from almost everyone, he had little idea of what was happening in the country he ruled. The Ming emperors were buried in tombs north of their capital, Beijing. The tombs all followed the same basic design, a temple in front and a walled enclosure with the underground tomb behind. Because Wan Li ruled for so long, he constructed a huge tomb, and in 1956, Chinese archaeologists